Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Getting Back to Basics, Retail Paint Matching. Presenting today is Tim O'Rourke, one of our technical sales specialists for retail applications. I'm Robert Grotans, the Global Technical Marketing Manager, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Just a few things to go over before we get started. Due to the number of people that are attending today's webinar, we will keep everyone muted. If you have any questions, please use the questions function on the GoToWebinar panel. Tim will have time to answer a couple of your questions at the end. If we don't get to your question, we will have someone follow up with you. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a link so that you can review the webinar at your convenience. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tim to get things started.
Thanks, Robert, and thank you everybody for joining the webinar this morning. I wanted to get into a couple back to the basics, show some of our instrumentation. Over the last couple years, MatchRite or X-Rite has come out with a couple instruments for the retail market. One of the first ones I want to walk through or talk about is the I1 paint. That's going to replace the RM400 that some of you may already have. Let me see if I can get that going. And so what we'll learn today is how we can capture color measurement on pretty common samples. We'll also get into complex and how to go about those with the instruments. And then again, do some setting apart your counter. It's important that you utilize these instruments. We know that color matching is a very important part. We can grow your paint business by having custom matching in your store. People don't have to run down to the big box or anything like that. They can do it right from your store. So the first thing I want to talk about is what's called the I1 paint. This is our newest instrument. We came out with it about 6 weeks ago, and it's a great little instrument that now moves it into the next level for those that are just getting into color matching. Some of you may not have ever had color matching. This instrument right here is a very cost-effective and easy-to-use handheld spectrophotometer. And so what it does is it's part of a system where this instrument's connected to our color designer system. And so I'm just going to exit out and go into our color designer system, which is our software that utilizes the instruments. There's really three ways to get color out of it, and we'll talk about a couple things before we get to the instrument. But you'll notice in the software we have a color lookup. And really what this does is it allows the user to do what we call formula books, which are your colors and your paint. You'll notice I have a couple formula books. As you know, we work with a lot of paint companies, certainly not trying to favor any one of them. But a customer will go to the chip rack, grab a color off the rack and want it done in their paint. When that happens, that's simply called a formula book. The old days, you actually had a physical book that you went and looked up the color formula for that color in that base or in that product line. So that's your formula books. The second way is your fan deck matches, okay, and that is a competitor's color inside your paint line. So I can come in here, customer brings in a color swatch, and they want to know if they can have that color made in your fan deck. And so I can come in here, select the fan deck, go through and find the color that they brought in or that they may know by heart. I can then select on it and walk through and formulate. Okay, and I'll show an example of that in a little bit. But I also want to talk about the instrument. The first one is the I1 paint. This instrument here, again, is a spectrophotometer connected directly to the software. In fact, I'm just going to kind of jump around here and show a screenshot of what the instrument looks like. And so right here, this is the instrument, the I1 paint. It has an indicator light on it that shows what status it is. In this case here, it's a solid white, meaning it needs to be calibrated. It comes on a stand that also holds the calibration plaque. So when I slide that back, I can now calibrate the instrument. We'll need to do that before. You'll also notice I have a measure button on the side. Rather than the old RM400, which had the measure button on the top, I can now measure from the side press the button here or use the software, which is new also. Sits in the stand. You'll also notice there's only a USB cable, no extra power cables. So that's a nice feature that it's all on one, there's just one cord tethered to it. So that's kind of the look there. I'll go back to my Color Designer software. And then on our Color Designer Plus software, down the bottom, the little toolbar rises up and we can calibrate instrument. The I1 Paint, again, has the plaque. I slide the calibration plaque backwards, place it on the white calibration tile. Calibration tile needs to be kept clean, and also the optics, canned air, and then a lint-free cloth to clean the tile. Never put anything inside the instrument to clean it. Give us a call if you have any questions on that. But all I simply do is click on either the measure button on the side of the instrument or the software to initialize the calibration. Goes through the calibration, just about 3 seconds. You'll get a check mark and we're ready to measure. What's nice about the I1 Paint, simply click on the measure button, the icon for it, and now as customers bring in easy samples like color cards, and again, I'll kind of just switch over to the video again real quick so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So customers may bring in simple color cards like this from a competitor. You know, I'm always a proponent of measure what they brought in. You know, someone like this color card's a bear card from Home Depot. They could certainly go to Color Lookup, look up that color and walk through. But I believe we should always measure with what they bring in, just for the fact that you're going to match that color to this color card that they brought in. And as we know, color cards change. Sometimes these cards sit on the windowsill and fade away. And so if you do it through the fan deck match or Color Lookup, you may end up with a wrong color match being used. Okay? So as simple as the customer brings in the sample, we can place the instrument on the color we're looking to measure. You'll notice that I also have the target. It needs to be about the size of a dime, okay, or larger. So I can't do really small pieces, but again, if I have, if they're bringing in a sample, make sure it's about the size of a dime. I can then target on that sample. I'm going to go back to the software now. And I can either click on the measure sample from the software, or I can just simply use the button on the left. I press, and then boom, there's our color. It's that fast. From there, now I'm going to walk through and qualify what does the customer want to do. They want to buy from the X-Rite paint. In this case, we now ask the questions of, what are you going to do? Well, they're going to paint their living room. So some of these questions are intuitive that you can answer yourself. We know that's an interior product. In this case, we talk about the type. The old days, we used to have latex and oil. Nowadays, pretty much latex. We also will see sheens. Now, in our case, I only carry the one sheen in the X-Rite paint, but I may be able to, hold on here. I may be able to use that. From there, I select product line. Hold on here a minute. Get to that screen. To my scene. Okay. We'll get back to that. So now from here, I select the product line, what can size, and now what base. And again, let the computer select the base for you. From there, we also now talk about auto illuminant. What light source are we going to have this product made in? Now, the software will default to daylight if we don't do anything, or if you select auto illuminant. Daylight is the choice for color matching. In this case here, we've got our screen set up to where I can, I see my product, what base to use. I can print to a label printer, save it to a customer file, and I also can dispense. If I have an automatic dispenser connected, we can set that up through the software to be able to do that all from one computer. But it's as simple as I come in here to save. I can type in a customer name. Got that O'Rourke guy that comes into the store. I select here, I've got different things set up through this. And so from there, I can now highlight, modify details, go to color description, we'll call it a blue. I then can go job description, maybe it's the bath is what they're looking to do. I click on save, and now that information is there. And so the I1 paint can simply do simple colors, real simple and easy. Again, being able to custom match is a huge advantage for your store, where if they come in the store and want to do custom matching, you don't have the instrument, they're going to go find it somewhere else. And that's business that you just can't have walk away. So we have things that certainly ease the samples that we use for this. Again, color cards are very simple. You'll see that they may just bring in a paint swatch, again, from a can. Again, simple things like that to measure. If we get into difficult items, like here, a piece of stucco, okay? Again, very difficult to match, but the software has the capability to do averaging. And so one of the things, I'm just going to kind of go back here real quick. For the I1 paint, okay, I'm going to go into my settings screen, and you may want to select averaging, and that's where this is here. I can turn that on. Now when I go to a color match, and I click on measure sample, okay, I now will take a measurement on my stucco. I'll want to rotate that sample to either take another measurement, or I can also accept. And you'll see it's taking measurement. I can take number 3, or I can accept the measurements, and off I go to formulate that color. Again, very difficult samples with texture. Those kind of things can be difficult to match, but as long as you know what you're measuring and the effects that can happen, the instrument will certainly get you to where you need to be in an easy way. Again, the I1 paint, very cost-effective, simple to use instrument that can get you into color matching. So this instrument, connected with our Color Designer Plus software in a full system, computer and everything, runs about $4,500. The instrument itself is right around $2,000 by itself. But again, it's our newest technology that outperforms the old RM400. So X-Rite, in our case, for simple, easy to use, we keep creating instruments that give us the advantage over the competition. So that's our color I1 paint. What I want to do is I'm going to switch over and connect to our newest instrument. Just give me a second here. Any questions, Robert, that we have?
If you have a question that you haven't asked yet, feel free to submit one. It looks like we don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
But we are happy to address them as they come in.
Okay, I'm just going to switch over here. And that's what's nice, is some of you that may have our old software with an older instrument, the newer software, you know, we can just swap out the old instrument for the new. And in this case here, I'm going to connect the Metaview, which is our newest instrument. And I'll kind of jump back into the screen here and kind of see what the next slide. We now talk about the Metaview. It's our breakthrough non-contact imaging spectrophotometer. So now we really take the leap from just measuring color and all the things that are part of the color measurement. We now are going to pull an image out, separating texture and things like that caused color measurement issues before. We now have the technology to go to that next step. I'm going to escape, minimize this. Now, same thing, I'm going to kind of show the camera here real quick to show you the newest instrument technology. Okay, and this is our newest instrument called the Metaview. Non-contact spectrophotometer. It replaces our old iView, which we came out in 2008. This instrument came out about 18 months ago, and it's really revolutionized the color measurement industry. So same thing here. This instrument will calibrate every day. The way that we do that, same thing. We come down here to calibrate instruments. You'll notice now, I'm going to kind of jump real quick back. No, I'm not. So I'm going to jump back to the video, but hold on here. Calibration is, in this case here, we're going to pull the calibration plaque forward. I also have a little demo thing here that kind of shows what's really happening. So this is our slide plate that's underneath the instrument. Okay. As you pull that forward, we're going to measure this white cal tile. Once we're done with that, we're then going to push it back to its spot. And we're going to then measure the target square here. So our first measurement is nothing more than that calibration. Once it's in place, we click on measure. It's important that the instrument sees the white calibration tile and that it's in the right spot. If you're not in the right position, the instrument will not calibrate or not allow you to calibrate. So we've got certain things in place that make it work that way. So calibration here, we're actually calibrating the instrument. We're also calibrating the camera that's in place inside the instrument. Once that's complete, we're going to slide it back to the target square. See the check mark? We're going to slide it back. You'll notice that that camera sees what's happening. One of the things we need to make sure is if the instrument is not in the proper position, the measure button will not appear. And that's what I was trying to say. If you're not in the right position, the measure button does not appear. So in this case here, the measure button appears. We're now going to measure the target square. We need to make sure that that's clean also. So what we can do with cleaning with this instrument is just do a visual. Look and see that there's no paint on the calibration plaques, either the plaque itself or the measurement square. So in this case here, we now have the color matching instrument, the Metaview. I'm going to switch back and talk about some of the things we can do with this instrument. Okay, we noticed that before we could certainly do simple color cards. Okay, someone brings in a color card, we can click and measure those. We're now going to take it into things like, well, what if I have a piece of stucco, very textured surface? We now can manage and be able to do that. What if someone brings in a piece of fabric that we need to measure? The old days you had to worry about, well, what is behind that piece of fabric can cause effect on what we match. And so the Metaview has the capability to, and I'll switch back over again. If I go to color match, I now, like a simple color card, I can place that underneath there. And you're able to see, we're visually matching exactly what we're seeing, okay? So the nice thing is, one of the things I think we'll notice right away is, if someone were to measure this, we know it would be wrong. But this is what happened in the old color matching days is, you didn't pay attention to what you were measuring, and now you measured the color name and number as part of the color. Well, it came back wrong, and again, it was just an error on what am I really measuring. So with this instrument, I can simply place the color card underneath there and be able to measure what I see on the screen. So in this case here, one of the things our instrument can do is not only look at the color, but it's pulling the image out. If there's multiple colors in there, it can separate the color and let me pick which one I want. So in this case here, it sees the separation of color, allows me to pick that color, and off I go. I'm going to go back to the measure screen. You'll notice that now, like I said, what about something like a piece of stucco? You know, this is what, if I place this underneath there, you know, this is what your instrument sees when you put, you know, a textured object like a piece of stucco in here. So the Metaview now takes the color, pulls the image, looks at it, pulls the image out, separates all the peaks, the valleys, the black spots, the shadowing, and only looks at color. And so from here, I've got averaging. I simply probably wouldn't use that, but I'll accept the measurement, and off I go. Notice it didn't separate the color out because it's only pulling out that color that's the dominant color in there. If there was more colors, it would separate. But from here, I can now walk through and formulate that color to my paint line. Auto base, daylight for everything. There's my sample. I can now print, save, dispense. I'll go back to my color customer file. And you'll notice with the Metaview, I've also saved the image of what I took. So again, as the customer comes back and needs more, we also not only have their information, we also have the image taken from it. And so what I'm going to do is, with the Metaview, I'm going to just go into the settings real quick and turn off that averaging. So I don't feel we need the averaging with the Metaview. So I come in here, I'm going to turn that off. Our instrument also will enable sheen detection if the database is allowing. So that's how we can do a stucco, and I'll show you the examples. Let's say a customer now brings in, again, I'll switch over to my camera. If you're getting dizzy watching me, I apologize. So in this case here, let's say the customer brings in this little piece of swatch from behind their wall plate or something like that. They need that color matched. Well, with the i1 paint, it's too small a sample. I would need them to go get a bigger sample. But with the Metaview, I'm going to place that underneath the target square. I'll go back to color match. And you'll notice now the Metaview has the capability to do this small a sample. And so what I can do is I can change my target square from 12 millimeters down to 2. I can click on the spot that I want to measure, and I click on measure sample, and off I go. So this is, again, a very unique feature that only the Metaview has, is being able to go down to 2 millimeters. Again, I can walk through and formulate that color. Okay, let's say that, again, very small spots. What about something with a lot of texture? Somebody brings in this color, which is nothing more than a soap sponge, but again, it's an inspiration item. You'll notice now if I click on measure, this is awesome because what it does is it takes the image out. It may see multiple colors. So it sees the dark blues, the light blues, and what it does is it allows me to select which color I want and then go through and formulate that color. So these are samples that, again, I've been for the last year and a half trying to find things that don't work. And we've had I've had great success with things you wouldn't think would work at all. Here's an example I love because of the fact that, let's say that I want to get that dark brown here. Well, I can use the software and try to go down to a very small spot. Here, sorry. And let's say that I want to go down to, I'm trying to get this dark brown here. Well, again, anything inside this circle is going to be used as color measurement. So I really wouldn't want to do that. What I suggest, because it's an imaging, I can click on measure sample, and it'll find all the multiple colors in there, up to 3 plus a combined, and let me select which one I want. So this, let's say this was a countertop, someone brought this in. I now can go through and select that dark brown right here or that light brown and walk through and formulate that color. And just like we did before, I can go through that and formulate it. Again, I click on save. There's that O'Rourke guy again. I go to modify details. You'll notice that I have my sample right there that I measured to. So the instrument has that capability. One of the things I want to show, I'll switch back over to my screen, is some of these, again, visually see them is pretty important. So the sample that I measured here, here's what we get for the color matching of that light blue. It's a very close match. Your old instrument, that's the best it could do. Let's wait for that screen to... it always comes out dark, and that's the kind of thing that technology with using the light as our spectro or how we measure, we're going to run into that problem, is it's going to just average everything it sees and give me measurements that are too dark for that. So a lot of times customers that know that, they're going to formulate it and then reduce the amount to try to get that match correct, to try to make it lighter. In our case, this is all first match capability that's really getting it right on first match. You know, where we did that sample with the countertop. Again, very close match to what we formulated, that light brown or that dark brown. This is the technology that really takes it to the next level and puts you in control of what matches you're doing. This one here, this is a great example for the fact that the old days, again, you had to worry about what's behind the sample, and that would be part of the color. So in this case here, I can switch this over. I'll just kind of do one last demo here of that. And so I'll come back into the Color Designer software, click on the color match, and again, you'll notice here that I've got a visual so I can see exactly where I'm measuring. And all I simply do now is click on Measure Sample. And again, it goes out. I don't need to go and use the target square. Use the large aperture as often as you can. Let it separate the color, because when I do the large aperture, it always takes away the shadowing, the peaks, the valleys. So in a case like this sample, it takes away all of that, the problems with what texture or how fabric works with instrumentation. We can now pull that away, get that yellow sample, and be able to formulate to it. So the Metaview has the capability of measuring things we really had a lot of problems with in color matching before. Also, the instrument itself, I'll kind of just rotate this. We can place it on its side. Someone brings in a large object, you know, I can put that up to the instrument like this. And it also has a measure button here on the front that when I'm in the measurement mode, I can click on this and it will take the measurement for me. Again, all these features that we brought in and incorporated, because with the iView, which was the instrument before this, we found the things that we needed to make change. So as simple as that, we did the calibration. We also now can press this down and be able to clean if we need to get to those lenses. So the instrument itself, that cost of ownership goes away because we can maintain and keep that clean as we use it for our software or use it for color matching. So again, Color Designer Plus, 3 ways to get color out. One is your formula book. I can click on that, walk through my color in my paint. Okay, so I can then select the interior latex, satin, and there's my formula book. Again, anytime it's your color and your paint, it's the formula book, and you should go that way for it. Okay, someone brings in let's say they bring in a competitor color. Okay, like I said before, I would tend to measure it, but if they came in and said, well, I really love that Aberdeen green, can you make it in that X-Rite paint? Then at that point, they don't have anything to give you to match. It's just a favorite color. Again, now I have that capability to be able to walk through and formulate that way. So formula books, Fandex are all done through color lookup. Custom matching, that's the ticket to increasing your paint sales. You know, when customers bring in a favorite object, inspiration item, you now have the capability to measure it and be able to formulate to exactly what they want. So no longer do you need to just, oh, I'll just find the closest color. Where in the old days, if someone did bring in some of these samples, you know, like this here, the sponge, the best you were going to do is find the closest match. Or someone brought in stucco. You know, before you had to wait for your paint guy who's the expert and only he knew how to do stucco or textured samples. No more. We know we can place that under the Metaview and be able to get good matches from there. So I've got a couple examples here I want to show you in the PowerPoint of what we've had customers come in and show us what they've done. Here's an example here. This was a store up in Canada with our Metaview, and the guy brought in a chicken. As funny as that sounds, they actually measured the feathers. Again, it's a great show for our Metaview. I'm not so sure it's the greatest color matching because animal feathers are very difficult, but I think you get the point that, the store was, we'll try anything, bring it in. So the chicken was one. Here was one we just saw recently. The customer brought in a watermelon, and if I asked you what's the next photo, what did they paint? Most of you wouldn't think about it, but they got the color matching for the watermelon, the green, the dark green and the light green, and they painted their propane tank. So pretty cool idea. Wouldn't think to do that. Didn't know you could. But anyways, our Metaview gives us that opportunity to do things we never ever could do before or didn't think to do. So the imaging spectrophotometer, the Metaview, brings it to the next level. The I1 paint, it can be your instrument if you've never had anything, or if you like the RM400, which is an instrument that got you into paint matching 5-10 years ago. Moving into the I1 paint or upgrading to either one is certainly certainly feasible for you to do. If you have any questions or anything like that, or any questions, Robert?
It looks like we don't have any questions at this time, so we will go ahead and end the webinar. If you do come up with a question, though, you can feel free to email us or contact us on social media, and we'll have Tim follow up with you. Again, you will also receive a link to this recording probably tomorrow, so if you'd like to watch it again. So thanks, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day.